Hello, and thanks for joining me on the Healing Streams Reflection. The title for today's post is The Gift of Another Chance. In Luke chapter 16, verse 1 to 13, the Bible reads, He also said to his disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. So he called him and said to him, What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward. Then the steward said within himself, What shall I do? For my master is taking the stewardship away from me. I cannot dig. I am ashamed to beg. I have resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So he called every one of his master's debtors to him and said to the first, How much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. So he said to him, Take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, And how much do you owe? He said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, Take your bill and write 80. So the master commended the unjust steward, because he had dealt shrewdly. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of the light. And I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much, and he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Friends, in our world today, it seems there are people at the top of legitimate banks and enterprises who are corrupt and using every device that they can use to get what they want to get. There are crooks who create Ponzi schemes, scams, and accounting fraud to get rich overnight. They are very shrewd. They are very clever at it. Sometimes it may involve someone's scheme for buying stocks or trading commodities. The manager of a clothing franchise who controls the cash register can conspire with a customer who comes in to buy 100 dress and make the bill come out to only 75, and they split the difference of $25. Some folks too engage in sham business deals with the common desire to get rich, preferably with a minimum of effort. They are so zealous that they spend their lives climbing the ladder of success only to find out that it's leaning against the wrong wall. Even series of American greed broadcast on the television shows that such business managers get rich quick, only to discover that they are really poor at the end of their life after being caught and jailed. Luke chapter 16 verse 1 to 13, which I just read, Jesus tells the parable of the shrewd or clever manager to the disciples. In Luke chapter 16 verse 1, it became clear that this steward had a good job. But we learned in verse 4 that the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, were listening to and scoffing, poking fun at him. It is the very story of the rich man and his steward. Someone in the rich man's house reported to the master that his steward had been wasting or squandering his money. Naturally, the master immediately calls this servant in. Immediately, the master immediately calls this servant in and asks to see a list of his expenses and the monies that he had spent, because the master wants an accurate record of his responsibility. The servant doesn't defend himself, but panics. He didn't expect to get caught. Now, what was he to do? Luke chapter 16 verse 3 shows he was not repentant. He simply wanted to ensure his future. He didn't have the skills to become a laborer, and he didn't want to end up on the street, probably as a homeless person. Now faced with a financial crisis, he suddenly becomes forward-looking and resourceful. A new chance with a new challenge. Although our dishonest manager or steward does not repent, just like the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15, he nonetheless does something with the rich man's wealth that reserved the existing order of things. So the unrighteous servant devised a plan. He calls in each of the master's debtors and reduces the amount of money that they owed his master, as verses 4 to 7 informs us. The manager or steward trickster, thus a favor for the rich man's clients. He makes some shrewd or clever deals behind the master's back by reducing the debt owed by several of the master's debtors in exchange for shelter when he's eventually put out. He models behavior the disciples can emulate. Instead of simply being a victim of circumstances, the unjust steward transforms a bad situation into one that benefits him, and a new set of relationship based on reciprocal, giving in return, and egalitarian, impartial relationships of friends. This is a culture in which exchange, reciprocity is necessary and a sense obligatory to help him find a job. That is, making new friends who are obligated to help him in the future. Friends, knowing the urgency of his crisis, the dishonest manager builds bridges to the future. Properly motivated, he has proved himself shrewd. Properly motivated, he has proved himself clever and decisive, not incompetent or good enough. After all, what is unbelievable is the master's reaction. What is unbelievable is the master's way of responding when he discovers the steward's dishonesty. Instead of firing the man or putting him in prison, he commends the steward for acting prudently. He commends the steward for acting wisely. Beloved in the Lord, in today's world, I doubt that this is how an employer would. It is more likely that the steward, at the very least, will find themselves out of a job or perhaps find themselves in jail, such as we normally see when American Greed is aired on the television. But more puzzling still may be why Jesus makes a sinner the hero of the story. However, a careful look at the parable reveals that Jesus is not praising the man's cheating or fraud or scheme or crookedness, but rather his shrewdness or cleverness in using the present opportunity or chance to produce for his unavoidable or certain, in a sense, inevitable future needs. Jesus calls the man unrighteous, Luke 16:8, thereby condemning his wrong ways. Therefore, Jesus is saying that the valuable lesson to learn from this pagan scoundrel or trickster, who Jesus said, wiser than the sons of light, according to verse 8 of Luke chapter 16, that is Christians, in that the unjust steward saw what was coming and he used what had been entrusted to him while he could to prepare for the future.